Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second episode of the Lights Camera Discussion podcast. Today we're talking about Robert Eggers, and I am joined here with the beautiful collective unit and the handsome collective? No? Yeah, handsome collective unit, and then Todd as well.
Give him two shout-outs and then I'll just be put on the end. Hi. Thanks.
Some other guy.
And some other Geordie guy.
Yeah, that's it. It's the connection between Scottish and English.
Yeah.
Just leave him he's south of the border.
Absolutely. But welcome in, guys. How are we all doing today?
All good, mate. All good. How are you?
Not too bad. Excited to talk about Mr. Eggers. I believe I'm probably more excited than some other people in this chat right now. But yeah, so today we'll be talking about Robert Eggers. I think, had you guys seen his films before doing this? Or was the
I'd
first
not seen
watch?
The Witch, but I'd seen The Lighthouse and The Northman.
And Todd, I think you...
I'd seen all three of them
Yeah.
before, yeah. With a sort of varying past with them all.
Fair enough. This was my first watch for any Eggers films, so it was quite interesting to sort of do this. And again, part of the reason why we're doing this, isn't it? So you can watch different films and kind of discuss them a bit more analytically. So as the last episode, which we did with about Damien Chazelle, we're going to talk about each movie and kind of get into the about the nitty gritty about it, and also talk about the sort of Eggers and what he brings to the table and what he's done with the films, and yeah, basically just kind of go through it from there. So I believe Mr. Geordie is going to start us off with the first film on Robert Eggers' filmography. So Todd, I will hand it over to yourself.
Yeah, so we're starting obviously with directors who've got quite a short filmography, and Robert Eggers currently has 3 feature films. His debut was The Witch, which was a 2015 folk horror. It's a story of a family who leave England and move to New England and leave their little community in order to start a new life on their own, when they're plagued by theories that their daughter is a witch, or that there is a witch around kidnapping children. It's an interesting film that I know is divisive. Stars Anya Taylor-Joy, and this was one of her breakout roles, I believe. It was one of the first times we'd really seen Anya Taylor-Joy in anything. I'm interested to know, really, from my perspective, what you two think of this, because this was a film that when I saw it, I don't know what was the matter with us first time I watched it. Maybe I was in a bad mood. Maybe I just wasn't giving it its full attention. I was like, shite. Genuinely sat, was like, worst film I've seen. Nothing happens. What an absolute load of bollocks. And we will go into it further, but I have done a full 180 on this film over the last few years, like a proper full 180. So, Matthew, I'll hand over to you first. Just general sort of like, how would you feel about it? What did you think of it?
Yeah,
especially with it being a first watch for you and Colin. Sorry, so you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was definitely, for me, it was kind of a strange movie in that, again, not knowing Robert Eggers and what he does and how he does things, the fact that everything was kind of like natural lighting and really kind of like almost bare bones for what seemed like quite a big film. Yeah, I mean, certainly it's, I mean, we'll kind of go into kind of what we thought about them going forward. It wasn't my favorite one of his. In fact, I thought it was the weaker one of all his. But there's a lot in there that I enjoyed and thought was interesting choices creatively and story wise and things as well. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I definitely enjoyed the other 2 more.
Colin?
So horror's like one of my least favourite genres of film. I'm not a major fan of it. Recently tried to be a bit more exploratory, and then recently watched like the Scream series and stuff for the first time, like start to finish, or start to up to date. I'm probably going to use this with all 3 of his films, but it's an interesting film. I think it's a good film that, you know, if you're into your movies and your cinema, you're a cinephile, like, it's one of those ones that you should be watching, because he's a very exciting, interesting director. I don't think the film was like poorly made or the acting was bad. Like, nothing was bad about it. It's just not my kind of film. I'm glad I've watched it though to be able to say that I have and discuss it with you guys and discuss it with anyone moving forward. But overall, yeah, it's just it's very creepy. It's very like just like puts hairs up on the back of your neck at times. And the more and more you get into the story, it kind of unravels as to, well, there is supernatural elements around them, but it turns out that it's kind of more than one, but then they're connected through the witch and then through your goat man and stuff like that. So it's we can obviously dissect it further moving forward because we're just doing initial thoughts, but yeah, didn't particularly like quote unquote like enjoy it, but I thought it was an interesting watch, and like I say, I'm glad that I have experienced it now.
I just think it's one of those films where, sorry, Eggers in general, and like you said about, you'll say this about every film. I'll sort of use this is that he's making films that he wants to make. He's making films that he's very, very clearly passionate about. And I think for me, that's one of the big draws is you can see how much time, how much love's gone into it. I would say out of the three of us, I'm the one who's into horror. I'm like the
I'd absolutely agree. You watch absolute dross when it comes
I was
to
going to
horror
say,
as well. Like
I didn't know if you were going to.
You'll watch like absolute nonsense on Shudder and be like, oh yeah, that's 4 out of 5 stars or whatever on Letterboxd. Like,
yeah, follow me on Letterboxd. That's some interesting one. But there's me self promo for the day. Yeah, like I saw the no one look. I was wondering who was going to say it first. Like this, I do. And the thing is, the reason I love the horror genre is because it can go so far. But I'm also aware that there is so much shit. Like there's so much shit, and I've watched half of it. So I got the no one looks. But I just think for me, like there's no real jump scares in this film. Like it's not your typical sort of like it's a stark contrast to like a lot of new horror where it is just jump scare after jump scare. One day we might end up just talking about like films we dislike, and I might talk about Smile for 3.5 hours and how much I hate that film because it was just jump scares. This is tension all the way through, and I think that's done through a number of things. But obviously Anya Taylor-Joy in the lead, like I say, as the first time that we were introduced to her, she was one of the main reasons why I give this film a second chance. After Last Night in Soho being so good, and The Queen's Gambit, and how good she was in that, I was like, look, she can't be in shite. She's not making shit. There's got to be a reason why everybody loves this witch film. And give it like a second watch and enjoy it a bit more. Anything in particular that stood out for you with The Witch? Is there anything that really was, that gripped you or that got you?
I mean, certainly for me, again, it was the sort of tension. Like even things like, it seemed to, like when you're writing a screenplay or whatever, it's all about or if you're like thinking of making a film, it's all about like sort of showing as opposed to telling. But a lot of it was showing, but it was like really effective. Like even things like the when the baby first gets taken or goes missing, when Anya Taylor-Joy is doing the like hide and seek, and then it goes from like her face to when she removes her hands and the kid's not there, like that was, again, not a jump scare, but I thought for me it was like a really interesting or a really creepy way of kind of setting the scene, in terms of what kind of happened going forward. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right when you talk about the tension side of it. That was for me a really high point, as to what this film did, and I think the setting and the natural lighting and stuff as well just added to that completely, and really complemented each other with in the film basically.
Yeah, I know, Collie, you were saying it's not your thing, it's not your type of film, but in terms of like anything else that stood out for you in there?
Well, yeah. So just to echo you, Anya Taylor-Joy, she was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the parents as well were awesome. It was weird seeing them in such prominent roles because like Kate Dickie and Ralph Ineson have always been kind of like bit part characters, like whether that was in Game of Thrones, or obviously The Office is what Ralph Ineson's most known for at least in our kind of realm of things. But he was in the Harry Potter movies, but he was just a bit part character. So to see him in a prominent role and Kate Dickie in a prominent role as the parents was really good. I thought the twins were really excellent wee actors. I thought they were good. The scene where they're out in the wood and they're arguing with Anya Taylor-Joy and stuff, that they're talking about that they speak to the goat and then that she's a witch, and the back and forth there I thought was quite interesting, especially when Anya Taylor-Joy's on top of the young lassie, like screaming at her and stuff. I thought that was really interesting. But the standout for me was the music. The music in the film I thought was excellent, and we'll cover it when we talk about the Lighthouse as well. It's Mark Corvin who did it. Who's I did a little bit of digging into him, and he's quite renowned in the sphere for not just like making like creepy music, but also being quite innovative with it. He there's a YouTube video that we can tweet out after that I watched the other day when I was researching. He created a thing called the Apprehension Engine, which is a custom-made musical instrument intended for the creation of unsettling noises to be used on scoring horror films.
Oh.
There's a YouTube video. There's a number of them of him playing this. He played stuff like there's instruments I've never even heard of, like the sarangi, the duduk, the erhu, and the waterphone. Like, this is the kind of, not run of the mill stuff that he's using, and I think that's what kind of, again, set the kind of hairs on the back of my neck up a lot. Was obviously the filmmaking, but the music more than anything. It was without, because the lack of jump scares, it builds and it builds and it builds, and it just feels like to me that it builds from the start of the film to the end. There's no like build and then pay off, build and then pay off. I just feel that it's constantly unsettling you, and it's kind of, it pushes the movie forward for me in terms of, I know something's coming, like a big reveal, or something is going to happen. And then it kind of, the payoffs at the end of the film when Ralph Ineson comes out and sees the barn destroyed, and then there's obviously out of nowhere, your goat absolutely nails him. That was as far as like in the film, like a jump scare or whatever. But it took me by surprise that there was no real build to that. It was just he's looking about, and then all of a sudden he's gored, and that's him.
I think it's like a film full of moments, is how I would put it. Like where Kate Dickie she thinks she's got the baby back, and when it pans out and she's being pecked in the chest by this crow, and it's literally just taken at a bit. Like, that was a moment. And when the little lad, who out of the whole cast, he was the one I struggled with the most. He's the one who, when he's on screen, and I know he's a bairn, but like you say, you've got the twins, and they're acting, really well. He felt like he was reading more than it. But anyway, when he was out in the woods and he meets that woman who doesn't look like a witch. If for those who are listening, Massey made suggestive eyebrows, and then that old hand. I don't know if you want to make the same eyebrows for that hand, Massey, but there we go. But like when that old hand reached round and grabbed him, like they're the things that took me back. Like you say, they're not jump scares, but they still sort of like take your breath away a little bit. Same with when he's
obviously just prior to that scene, the lead up to it, when he's going into and then there's like half a frame of the dog like disemboweled. It's almost maybe it'd be half a frame because I watched it really fast, but
it was 5 minutes.
I went like that. So like stuff like that was really good. I was kind of the same with him. He's probably the weakest of the cast, but
when he's go on.
I kind of like the film. Being a debut, I think it gives kind of like indie vibes to the film in terms of that Eggers is learning, but also like Anya Taylor-Joy's just finding herself as well in her career, and so is this young lad, and so is everyone. So it kind of it felt amateurish, but not like in a derogatory way. It felt like an independent film, which is it was under this A24, this mob that's releasing everything and anything. But that's still strictly speaking like independent and quite like low budget. I think just to go to monetary, it was on a $4 million budget and it grossed 40 million. So like it made 10 times what it cost, which there's not a lot of films do that, to that percentage or that fraction.
And I think it's hit such a status now. I'll post some photos to the Twitter. That it's got its second sight release. And for those who aren't into physical media or whatever, Second Sight are best in the business. Like, they're the ones who are producing these incredible sets for. It's not just horror. There's a lot of horror films, but it's not just horror films. Like, I've got an In Bruges one, the Nightingale and stuff. And I think like say for a debut to get that sort of treatment, there's not a lot of films that have. Host is the only one I can think of that's got a similar sort of treatment. I think for me, it's a case of like I look through Letterboxd after I've watched a film. Now, obviously, I've watched this a few times. I know it well, so I was like flicking through, and a lot of people were saying like anybody could have done that. Anybody could have made it. And why hasn't anybody made it then? Why hasn't anybody done it? Like this is what Eggers does. He takes like really simple things, really simple ideas, and obviously some that aren't so simple we'll get when we get to the Lighthouse. But like he takes very straightforward things and makes them look, in my opinion at least, incredible. Like you say, Massey, it was visual storytelling a lot of it, and I think without any sort of frills. Do you know what I mean? There's no. It's bland costume, it's bland setting because that's what it was like. It's true to life. It's a proper period piece.
Even the dialogue and stuff is obviously like old English speak, which is sometimes quite hard to track. And we'll cover this in all three of his films, but not one of the three films has like normal dialogue in it, so it can be. I've when I was watching them, there were some conversations that I had to like replay because I was missing the point, or I was missing like a line of context or whatever. So it's one of those films that you can't sit with your phone out, or all three of them, and you have to focus on them. The dialogue's really part of that, and also they're very engaging, just in general.
The only other thing for me, because I know what you're saying about Ralph Ineson and Finchy from The Office, like, is that his voice is so like distinct. It's hard to take it. He's in the Green Knight, and now he's doing adverts and stuff, and all I can hear every time is Finchy. Like, he just has this sort of like powerful voice, amazing. And that I know it shouldn't. It takes me out of it a little bit.
Well, it
like,
was so. I was obviously playing Final Fantasy 16 recently.
Mm-hmm.
And Ralph Ineson voices one of the main characters in that, and it's the same. It's like as soon as you hear it, they're like, "That's Finchy," and you Google to check it, and it is. It's like you say, it's so distinct.
Mm-hmm. And just for me, the other thing, it's something really simple, and I've Googled it, and nobody's answered the question, and I've rewatched it, and I can't, like, it's such a flash and the light and stuff. I get really freaked out by like goats and sheep's eyes because they look like the Hypnotoad from. That's the only way I can describe it from Futurama. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Right. And in this film, when we get a close up of Black Phillip, I swear to God, he has human eyes. Right. And it's one of those bits of things where I've had a look, I can't find it, I've rewatched it, I'm sure it's right. Just if you're watching the film, if you're listening, or you two, I know, like, you might not want to rewatch it, have a look, because obviously the big reveal is that Black Phillip is like a ward of the devil. He has been sent there, and that transition. Sorry, that was another thing that I lost my shit at. That transition of the goat's hooves into the boots.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely ridiculous. And if you haven't watched this film, please watch it with a good sound system or like a set of headphones or something on, because that whisper is like ridiculous. Again, it's just sensational. And I think, just to go back to what I said at the beginning about, I probably was on my phone. Do you know what I mean? It was probably one of those where I didn't give it the full attention the first time, and that's why I felt like nothing happened. But like, every little detail is thought about, every performance, and like I say, that the young lad, the middle son, he wasn't great until he's possessed. When he's laid down,
that was
screaming.
Incredible, yeah.
He really like brings it back round. Yeah, for me, it was a case of going, holy shit, like, Eggers knows his stuff. He's making a film about a period that he clearly knows a lot about, that he clearly loves. And it's just, for me, it's a 5-star film now. It's like it's a 10 out of 10 type thing. And I could watch it very easily on a loop, despite it not being an easy film to watch. Yeah, just a sort of little wrap up thoughts about it.
That's fair. I mean, I thought it was one of his weaker ones, to be honest, but I think you're absolutely right in terms of the attention to detail, and as you say, you can tell that he is doing something that he loves. And again, we're talking about Robert Eggers, but I know we've kind of touched on them, but A24, they give these directors and filmmakers the opportunity to make like weird, wacky, or not films that are kind of different to the norm. So I must admit I am certainly happy that A24 are giving these people the chance to actually make this sort of things, like they did The Whale and stuff, and Everything Ever All at Once and that as well. So massive.
Uncut Gems, Hereditary.
Oh yeah.
You read their highest grossing films, and it's Everything Everywhere All at Once, Uncut Gems, Lady Bird, Hereditary, Talk to Me, Moonlight, Midsummer, Ex Machina, The Witch, The Whale. That's their top 10.
That's wild. Like that.
And there's loads of others.
Yeah.
Like they made Euphoria, the TV program as well, which is
wow.
apparently really good. And Beef, Rami, Mo, stuff like that. Like they're at the forefront of a lot.
That's huge.
And it's not as if they're making like a specific like Blumhouse a horror, and that's it. That's the line they go down. Like looking down the list there, like they even did the Supersonic, the Oasis documentary.
I didn't know they did that. It's a great documentary.
And I think no, it wasn't. Never mind. I was going to say, was it Matt Whitecross's first? But they give a lot of like opportunities, like say to new directors with big risk, because that Swiss Army Man, like. That could have been shit, and I know a lot of people who say it's shit. I loved it. They give those opportunities, and when you pitch, well, what's the film about? Well, a man is stranded on a desert island, and he meets a corpse that can fart to get him home. Like, spoilers, sorry. But yeah, like, how does that work?
That sounds like the Eternals.
Yeah, less said about that, the better. But yeah, so I don't know if there's anything else. I feel like we've covered pretty much everything. It's a tight 90 minutes. And I feel like it flies through. Obviously, for some more than others, it will fly even quicker if you're watching it at 1.5 speed. But
I'm rewatching The Walking Dead at the moment at 1.75 speed.
When he runs to the barn,
it's more like The Running Dead. Yeah, exactly. I've just got a few tidbits of like trivia and stuff that I found on IMDb or Wikipedia. So Daniel Malik or Daniel Chowdhury, who plays Philip, or the Goat Man. So this is just straight off Wikipedia here. Malik believes one of the reasons he got the role was that Eggers had a sketchbook of how he thought the movie should look, and his drawings for the Black Phillip character looked exactly like Malik, who he had never met before, which I thought was kind of weird.
Wow.
And then I Googled, like, it was one of the first things I Googled when we said we were going to do this, was why it's stylized as VV. And apparently that's because like W just wasn't used as a letter back then or something, like during that period. So it's like a period specific or period like correct choice to make, which I thought was quite strange. Because I did always wonder why, because it's in loads of things it's like called The Witch, and then in brackets it's like stylized as VVITCH.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got nothing really to add apart from like, I'm glad I've watched it, but it won't be one that I'll rush back to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, Massey, if anything else you want to say about it before we move on to the next one? Yeah,
no, I think we've kind of covered it. Again, for me, it was the weaker of the three, so I kind of would much rather just move on to the next one to start talking about how good they are.
It was filmed and it was filmed in 25 days. I thought was quite interesting. Like less than a month's shot time. I know for a 90-minute film, but and there's no like major special effects, but even that's like a very concise shooting schedule, I think.
Definitely, and there's not a moment wasted, as we said.
Oh no.
Yeah, cool. I'm happy to move on if you guys are.
Yep, yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Okay, so we're moving on to the next film in the Eggersverse, which is The Lighthouse, which is
Sorry, caught me off guard. Carry on.
Which is the story of two lighthouse keepers trying to maintain their sanity while living on a remote and mysterious New England island in the 1890s. I mean, again, this was once again a first watch for myself, and I'd only ever heard about the fact that he pleasures himself to a mermaid. That's all I knew about the film, so it was it was interesting going in with that little tidbit of information and waiting for that moment to happen. Yeah, again, you know, Collie, I know you're going to use the word interesting. It's a very out there sort of film that felt again, it's one of those where, as Todd already said with The Witch, you can tell that he like obviously put his heart and soul, like Eggers put heart and soul into this story, and there's so much technical things that are so out there, not done in normal sort of like bigger films or sort of like you know, mainstream. It's not mainstream film, but you know, in terms of the technical side of it, it's completely a unique thing that he did. Things like the aspect ratio, the fact that it's all in black and white, and it just again adds to the period that he's portraying in the early 1890s. Even from the start, when it starts off with them walking silently past the other two that are leaving, and you know, even just scenes like that just set the whole thing up without having to do, you know, give us any like exposition or any sort of like summary as to what's going to happen or what the plot is and stuff. And I thought it was such a really, really well made film. Collie, thoughts on The Lighthouse? What was your initials?
So my experience with this film, I'd watched it twice prior to us doing this. The first time was in the cinema. It was the last film I seen prior to COVID. I believe I was trying to recollect that the other day, and I fell asleep watching it. I fell asleep. I don't know if that was just because it was a long day or boring particularly. Like, it is quite a hard watch because it's black and white, and again coming back to kind of the old English like kind of way of speaking. But yeah, so that was my first experience. I was like, I must have not enjoyed that. It then came, you know, out to be streamed, etc. during COVID. And I rewatched it, and I was like, oh, okay, like it's again interesting. It's not a film that like the run of the mill person could make. I think it's one that it does take a lot of passion and a lot of talent to pull together alongside like two incredible performances. Like, I know there's only two of them, and therefore they have to carry the film by default, but they carry the film. Like the acting individually and together as a couple, Pattinson and Defoe like smash it for me. I was trying to like look at what each of Eggers' films is like category wise or like genre wise, which is pretty much an all out kind of horror, folk horror, as Todd said. But this, just again from the Wikipedia, says the film has defied categorization in media, and interpretations of it range from a horror film to psychological thriller to survival to a character study, among others. And I think out of all those ones listed, it ticks all the boxes. There's the horror elements of you know, the use of the mermaids and the seagulls, and it's like a gross film. I think like it's so. It made me so uncomfortable, and again comes back to the music. It's the same. It's Mark Corvin again for this. He's not used in the Northman. It's different people, but we'll cover that when we get onto it. But again, he uses the kind of the strings, and it's just the undertone and the unsettling score. I think really adds to the film. Out of the three, I would say I enjoyed this one the most. I was interested in it the most. The Northman, again, we will cover it, but it's more run of the mill, I think, out of the three. So this, in terms of between The Witch and this, in terms of like the art house style or the kind of independent style that he does, I thought I much more enjoyed this to The Witch. So yeah, I think that's me kind of covered bits and pieces of my thoughts on it that we can delve into now.
Perfect.
Well, actually, no, sorry, Todd's got to give his views. Sorry, yeah.
Hi. No, I went into this with really low expectations because at this point I hadn't rewatched The Witch, and I think I just stuck it on because more than anything it was Willem Dafoe. Because at this point, I think well, we'll get on to Willem. At this point, I hadn't really seen Pattinson in anything other than attempting to watch Twilight.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm famously not a fan. And he was kind of like breaking out into these weird roles. He'd made Good Time, which is under A24, and if you haven't seen, is a fantastic film. Where he really shines. So yeah, I went in just being like, I'll stick it on. This is going to be the same as The Witch. What a load of shite. And I think that is a testament to how good this film is, that it turned me round on first watch. Like, I enjoyed it on the first watch, expecting nothing. And since then, like, I've just enjoyed it more and more. This and The Northman, for me, like, I know we have a different level of ratings, but like this and The Northman for me are on par. The Witch and then them two, but by no means bad films, but still both amazing films. I just thought, like, you know, the dialogue is almost like you could have had it on the stage. It is literally two people in a room and not a lot else. Obviously, there is a lot more because it's on film, but if you put it on stage, it wouldn't take away because of the performances, because of the dialogue. Again, I just think it's just a beautifully made film. This guy's, well, Andy's brother, have put everything into it, researched everything, made sure that it's accurate to the point. And then I know we will get onto it, but they built this lighthouse because it was the only way that it was going to work. They built a set. They used a ridiculous amount of the budget to make not just some like cardboard, you know, set, but to build a lighthouse out of concrete and iron. Like, it's nuts. It's ridiculous. And I think that is also what got me excited about this film. But again, we'll talk more about specifics. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell with this.
Perfect. Yeah, it's interesting what you say about Pattinson. I think he's such an underappreciated actor. I think he's like genuinely okay. You know, a lot of people know him as a Twilight guy, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. We sort of obviously started off, but some of the stuff that he's done is like, obviously, again, like passion projects for him, things that he wants to do, and I think he's phenomenal. Even the things, you know, like the fact that he was in Christopher Nolan film in Tenet, I thought he was brilliant in that as well. I know that film gets a lot of shit for what it is, but I thought he was.
He's the best. He's the best thing in it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I thought he was phenomenal in it, and you know. There's a reason that he was chosen as the Batman. He's brilliant in that as well. He gives us something different, and I really appreciate the fact that he's getting to do that sort of different things. But yeah, in terms of the relationship between the two, between Big Willie Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, what we're laughing about? Sorry, I'm not too sure. That's his nickname.
It's just yeah. Him and Will Smith. Yeah. Why not? Big Willie style.
Big Willie. Should we just quickly dive into that? That's why we're calling him that.
Yeah, we can. You can do a recap, Massey, for us.
Okay. What film was on again? It was like
Antichrist.
The Antichrist. Yeah. So basically, he did a full frontal nude scene, and his willy was so big that it was what was the word? It was like distracting. Confusing. That was it. Confusing.
It wasn't distracting. It was confusing. Distracting wouldn't be as funny as confusing. Like, folk were just like forgetting why they were there that day, what their names were, what their PIN codes were for their bank cards, just because he whapped out his member, you know.
So what you're saying is his willy was like the lighthouse, and that it drew everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah. Maybe that's what.
Maybe touch on that in a little bit, but there is phallic themes within this film,
and that's why he cast Willem Dafoe.
And just to interject on the Pattinson front before we move on to Dafoe, he's done this so much that apparently on IMDb it's became an actor trademark And it's Robert Pattinson. This is the third movie starring Robert Pattinson in which his character has a masturbation scene after Little Ashes in 2008 and Damsel in 2018. So Robert Pattinson's characters love a wank, apparently.
And how big's his knob? Just to...
I don't know. No, yeah. It's just below confusing but above distracting, apparently.
But mermaids love him. So yeah, moving on to Willem Dafoe. What I really liked as well about these two characters was the kind of not yin and yang, but sort of like they almost were like the evolution of the time. Defoe is like kind of the old seafaring guy with the way he speaks, and also his sort of being tuned into the supernatural, or like the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Like the sort of
he's sort of one with the nature, and
Yeah.
like that's the way that I saw it, was that he's connected to all of those things around him.
Yeah,
Whereas
absolutely. Where Pattinson's a bit different. He also his words are I think they even reference the fact that the words that he speaks are more reading words. I think it's Defoe says that to him or something. And things like he then kills like the seabirds and stuff that Defoe goes mental at, because that's the souls of like the lost sailors and things. So I do like the sort of the evolution of the lighthouse keeper, which is Defoe old world, Pattinson moving into the kind of new world. Yeah, there's loads of sort of just moments of tension as we kind of build, again similar to The Witch. It's not just like tension payoff sort of thing, it's kind of tension all the way through, but things like you see Defoe just kind of staring at Pattinson every so often, and kind of just outside his like line of sight and things as well. So I really love that sort of like the comparison between the two of them. Collie, thoughts on Defoe, Big Willie?
I thought he was excellent. The scene where he rants and raves at Pattinson's character, I think it's his cooked lobster or something like that. He like says that he doesn't like it or whatever, and he curses him out and stuff like that. And it's this really frightening take. And Willem Dafoe's kind of got, apart from his Willie, he's got one of his main characteristics is his eyes pop out his head. Like he can look quite manic easily, like that, Massey. Yeah. So that whole scene's very intense, but it's the underlying passive aggressiveness, I think, of him throughout the film that's really interesting. Like he's forever warning Pattinson's character about like, don't lose your mind, all that kind of stuff, and then obviously in the end he does lose his mind to it. It's interesting where the film's based on an Edgar Allan Poe unfinished story, which Robert Eggers' brother was trying to develop, and then Robert Eggers jumped on board, and then they developed this in the film. But it's also based on a 19th century incident. I think it was a Welsh lighthouse where the Wickies they lost their mind, and there was some sort of deal where there was one of them either died naturally, or I can't remember if the other one killed him. But he died naturally, I believe, and then he tried to hide his body, so he wasn't accused of murdering him, because obviously it was only him there. And it's a whole kind of thing that's worth like reading up on, like spending 5-10 minutes reading up on. But yeah, just the dynamic between the two of them, like I say, like I know they had to carry the film by default because they're the only two actors in it, really. But I think they shone massively. They didn't really even again, like some background trivia and stuff, they didn't speak to each other much during the filming. I think through choice to build up that tension between the two characters. I think Pattinson lived with the crew, and Defoe lived in a sea cottage. But then Pattinson didn't eat with the crew, and Defoe did eat with the crew, and it was all to build up this kind of mistrust between the two characters. So the actors made the choice to like not speak to one another, which is an interesting kind of method approach. You could probably describe it as.
Definitely. Todd, thoughts?
Yeah, again, sorry to go back to Twilight stuff, but I feel like when you see Elijah Wood in films, you see him as Frodo. Like what was it called? Maniac. I watched recently. Amazing film. He's fantastic in it. Proper creepy, but I can't help but look at him and go, "Oh, there's Frodo doing another thing." Daniel Radcliffe will never shake the Harry Potter thing. I feel like Robert Pattinson's shook the Twilight thing. He isn't the Twilight guy. He's picked the right projects and stuff. But Willem Dafoe, I think just because I was obviously brought up on him being like in the Spider-Man films, or like that was, I didn't really take him overly seriously as an actor. Like to my detriment, like it was stupid not to. But like after was it the Boondock Saints? I don't know, like wild little film that. I wasn't a big fan. He was amazing. American Psycho, absolutely incredible. Like he's the best thing about everything. And when you pair him with somebody like Robert Pattinson, and they have that, like you say, there's the mistrust one scene, and then the next scene they like dancing about and drunk together, and it's like it's this idea of like that cabin fever that works really well together. I struggle with surreal films. Like sometimes they really piss me off. Like when it feels like it's surrealism for surrealism's sake. Where I think this had like meaning. It felt like it had sort of stakes to it, and like it went a bit Lovecraftian at one point, which I thought was really cool. Like with the tentacle at the top of the lighthouse and stuff. And again that I really appreciated. For me, I think one of the big draws is, even though it's in black and white, it's still shot like it's stunning. Like the lighting and the angles, like you say, that imposing where he's Willem Dafoe's looking down at the camera is with the light up on him, given that, because he has just got like such an expressive and like contoured face, I suppose, contoured face. I don't. It changed things massively, and I think again, like you say with the witch, this is just Eggers flexing for Eggers. Like he's just going like, I'm gonna make this. Yes, it's weird, it's nuts, and it's gonna look a bit strange. It's not gonna be for everybody, but I'll make it. And again, for me personally, it was really successful. Even like the comedy bits of it, which seemed a bit like the fart jokes and stuff that came out of absolutely nowhere.
It does
and
rate
again,
a fart joke, like
he loves it, didn't he? we'll get to people farting, I'm sure. In
I
the
don't know if it's a
Northman,
Willem Dafoe thing or if it's an Eggers thing.
maybe they both just like
It's one of those the two circles,
got
and then
together
in the
there.
middle
The
is
Venn
just Willem
diagram.
Dafoe farting. Venn diagram, that's it. Yeah. So you're just talking about the way it's shot on that, Todd. It was nominated for best cinematography at the Oscars. That was the only like Oscar nomination that it got, but I think very deservingly so.
Mhm.
Lost
you're
out to
talking about
1917.
yeah, I mean that's
Which, yeah,
understandable.
exactly.
You're talking about like the way it's shot and the lighting and that. Again, direct off IMDb this, but the film was shot on double X stock black and white, which requires much more light to get exposure. So when they shot at night and indoors, they had to use 15 to 20 times more light on the set to actually see something. The crew put flickering 500 to 800 watt halogen bulbs in period correct kerosene lamps that were only a few feet away from the actors' faces. This resulted in the set being blindingly bright and the actors barely seeing each other. The lights were so bright that crew members sometimes wore sunglasses even during night shoots. That's like dedication to like, this film needs to be black and white. This film needs to look good. Like that's what we're sticking with. What like, not only was it like the black and white thing, but it was the aspect ratio for me was really interesting. I'm not too like clued up on aspect ratios, but you could just tell that it was something weird, like this vertical format. So I did a little googling and looking into it. It's referred to as the movie tone ratio, briefly used during the transitional period when the film industry was converting to sound, which was from 1926 to 1932 specifically. So even just like to creatively and choose that is what you want to film or show your film in is just it kind of shows Eggers' passion for period specific stuff, but also just film in general. He's and his kind of determination, like you said, Todd, of just like, this is what I want to make, this is how I'm making it. Enjoy it and don't enjoy it, fucking whatever you want to do with it. But it's again interesting. He's an interesting guy, an interesting directorial kind of style. And yeah, I don't have too much else to say about the Lighthouse. There's only so much I can say really with a 2-actor black and white, like, you know, vertical aspect ratio film. But
I
yeah,
want to just touch on the
good
aspect
overall.
ratio a bit more as well,
Yeah, of course.
actually. So, like, because of that as well, I don't know how you guys thought about this, but I kind of felt it felt quite Wes Anderson, like in the way there was a lot of symmetry and like a lot of like just standing staring at the screen, like you know, both of just standing like staring and stuff, and with the sort of tension of it as well, it to me the whole movie kind of felt like if Wes Anderson did The Shining, that was sort of like the sort of the two that talk about Venn diagrams is kind of what it felt like for me. There's even a bit where Defoe walks around with like an axe, and I was like, that's Jack Torrance. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's such an interestingly made film, and just as you say, it shows what that Eggers does what he wants, and I'm glad he does. I think a lot more directors would be better off if they were able to just kind of do their thing and take it from there. Todd, any final thoughts, or shall we move on, or what do you think?
I just like as I'm flicking backwards and forwards, like through my notes and stuff. Just like the difference between the two characters we're saying about, like, it, you know, the seafarer versus the city boy, and like that kind of thing. The mystery of who Robert Pattinson's character is and what he's done and why he's there, I think, is another reason to keep people gripped. Like, it feels like it is a subplot, but it feels like it's secondary, third, fourth. Do you know what I mean? It feels like it's so far down the list of important things in this film, and yet it's still brilliant. Do you know what I mean? It's still something that keeps you engaged. I just thought that was. But yeah, again, it's another one of those films that shouldn't work, but I feel like Eggers makes it work. And I think anybody else taking it on might not have, like you say, wouldn't have had the commitment of all those lamps, and wouldn't have had the commitment of building the bloody lighthouse. And you know, it wears its influences on its sleeve, but it's not taken from anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just on the Pattinson character front, like again, doing a bit of digging into it, and that it introduces that unreliable narrator thing as well, because the film is like. It's about the two guys, but it's from his perspective, the majority of it, or all of it. So there's various points in the film that it could be argued that it stops being like real, and then it becomes just everything's in his mind after a point. I know there's obviously the obvious bits in his mind, which is the mermaid bit and stuff, but there's various points in the film. It's like, oh, as soon as he kills the seagull, that's when it becomes within his head, or when they have the big argument over the cooked lobster, that's when it begins in his head. So there's different dissections of the film that you could argue are flipped from being, you know, true to then untrue, and I think that's kind of heightened for the fact that you don't know what he did before. I think it was he was a lumberjack or something like that before, I think, yeah. and his foreman died or something in mysterious circumstances, and there's a few hints maybe that he was the one that actually killed him, and he's on the run and all that kind of stuff. It, like Todd says, it's not like at the forefront of the film. The film is not about that, but it introduces yet more mystery to these two guys. Because that's the thing, like, you're kind of plopped into the film as he arrives at the lighthouse. It's, you don't know anything before, you've not shown anything before, and you've not been shown anything before from like the lighthouse's side of thing either. It's just, here's two dudes meeting for the first time or whatever in this lighthouse, and then this is what happens to them in this period of time. And I guess if we were talking about willies, there's an underlying like phallic kind of imagery within the film. You can tell, I mean, the lighthouse just in itself, but it was interesting. The phallic imagery of so this is a section from the Wikipedia. The phallic imagery of the lighthouse is explicit, as Eggers described it in the script as an erect penis, and who revealed that the film was meant to include, and then this is in quotes, a very juvenile shot of a lighthouse moving like an erect penis, and a match cut to an actual erect penis belonging to Howard. But the sequence was removed at the request of the financiers. So yeah, wow. Even A24 were like, let's cut out that. And then Willem Dafoe's like, I've got mine out if you want. And then he's like, because of the aspect ratio, Willem, we won't actually be able to fit it. So unless this is filmed for IMAX, no go, mate.
Just one shot with the right. Get the IMAX camera in.
That's it,
Willem
yeah.
Dafoe, get it back out again.
Just a match cut to Willem Dafoe and Antichrist, and just the whole crew just being like, "What's going on?"
What? Things on fire.
I think that's my final thought on it, because there's a massive in-depth section of the Wikipedia about the film, about analysis of genre, the psychoanalysis, the mythology, sexuality. It's definitely worth reading and delving into. I didn't feel I was educated or known enough to kind of talk about it, other than just touching on things like Todd. Obviously, you spoke about the Lovecraftian nature and the mythology side of the sea monster kind of thing. There's a whole section on that to read up on, so I encourage people to if you want to. I mean, I think the film can be analysed from the base value of like two dudes in a lighthouse who end up like having conflict, all the way down to, is this real? Is this not real? Is this in his head the whole time? You know, all that kind of stuff. Like even like it's questioned whether it was in his head that he found the mermaid statue in the first place within the mattress, because as soon as he sits on the bed, he starts poking in the hole, and then all of a sudden there's a mermaid statue. So yeah, it's interesting film.
Yes.
I guess I could conclude with interesting film.
Definitely. First, I just want to say we're making really good time. By the way, it's not even an hour, and we're coming into the Northman, which is nice.
I envisaged maybe like 20 minutes on each film. To be fair, so I know this will be a short episode by the fact that it's only 3.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely,
it's only 3 films.
But before we move on to Northman, just a quick question. I just want to hear your guys' thoughts. Mermaid vagina, yes or no?
Is this the whole the top half fish, bottom half?
Well, what we saw in the film, yeah.
I don't want. What thoughts on it? An interesting and artistic choice, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Maybe he was upset that he didn't get to show, a erect penis flapping about or a lighthouse flapping about like a dick. So then he was like, right, well, we'll get genitals in there somewhere. That's where we'll get them in.
So we let the curtains do the flapping instead.
Jeez, all right, that's enough.
Right, let's move on.
This has been the LCD podcast.
All for talking about Willem Dafoe's Willie, but it's just too much.
Okay, Collie.
So yeah, his third film is called The Northman from 2022. Just a brief synopsis is that Prince Amleth is on the verge of becoming a man when his father is brutally murdered by his uncle, who kidnaps the boy's mother. 2 decades later, Amleth is now a Viking who raids Slavic villages. He soon meets a seeress who reminds him of his vow: save his mother, kill his uncle, and avenge his father. So this, kind of touched on it earlier on, is more of a kind of, at least on the surface, it's more of a run-of-the-mill fantasy kind of, Viking revenge mission is kind of the overlying aspect of it. It does go into the surreal, more so later on in the film, all the way to the end. But I thought it was class in terms of, on the surface level. This is probably one of the ones where I feel like he could have just kept it more basic. He didn't need to veer off to the more mythological kind of elements, but I understand why that's maybe more of an interesting part to other people. Alexander Skarsgård in the lead roles, incredible. Anya Taylor-Joy being in another Eggers film, again incredible. I'm looking forward to Todd's discussion of some of the other cast members.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
You let slip some thoughts the other day, but overall, I enjoyed this. Maybe just from on a more base level, because it's probably the most palatable of his films. But yeah, Massey, what was your thoughts on The Northman? Again, first watch for you, as is the same as the other films.
Yeah, absolutely. And you absolutely hit the nail on the head, being the more palatable film. For me, there's obviously there is some things that maybe aren't perfect about this film, which Todd will certainly guide us through. But for me, like, this is a 5-star film. Like, on my Letterboxd, I gave it 5 stars. Like, I, from start to finish, was enamored by the world. I've always been kind of like into like your like Vikings and your Norse mythology and stuff. Like, even from a kid, like when we did history, that was something that really interested me, and this is absolutely full of it. And yeah, calling it a palatable, the more palatable film, as you said there, Collie, is absolutely perfect. It's absolutely spot on, because I felt like where the Lighthouse is maybe a bit harder to kind of take in and enjoy as such. This one had it all: action, fun story, or not fun story, but like interesting stories, lore behind it as well, amazing accents, things like that. So yeah, I absolutely love this film, and yeah, I thought from like a cinematography point of view and the performances were just absolutely spot on for me.
Yeah, so for me again, a phenomenal film. This is the only Eggers film I've got to see at the cinema, and I was chuffed I did. I think out of the three of them, this warrants a big screen. Where the other two, you know, I'd like to see them at the cinema, but it doesn't hurt that you haven't. Where if you got the opportunity, I would say see it just because of the scale of it. It's like I said, the last two films were Eggers flexing in a different way. This is him showing off what he can do in terms of like I say, a more mainstream film. This is his. I don't think Eggers will ever make a sort of an MCU film or like he'll never go down that. You know, it could prove me wrong, but I don't think he'll go down that route because he'll have to stick to a studio vision. He'll have to stick to where he's not that type of guy. But it was the more sort of linear film for me as well. You know, I know The Witch has a linear story, but it's more slice of life. We here, we gone. We've left them behind. Where this was, a folk tale again. It's another one. It's another sort of it's nature. It's ritual. He's taken all that stuff. Again, loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I like that he's most brutal. I know there's like moments of like violence in there's body horror, which is really cool in The Lighthouse, and a lot of brutality. But like in here, this is like one of the first things we see is a man get his nose taken off, and then what's left after that. And from there, I was like, right, I'm here. This is like, it's not horror, but I'm here for it. So, yeah, one of the things that for me that really stood out, just talking about Eggers and how he's putting stories together, is I want to say Sion. Again, apologies for my pronunciation's cack. So he wrote this with somebody else, and this guy he's a poet, he's an author, he writes films. He worked on another film called Lamb, which is I loved it, but it's out there. And I think what he's done is he's gone, look, I don't know enough. Even if I research, Scandinavian folklore, even if I go into this sort of like, I don't know enough, let's get somebody else in to sort of help with that. And I think that's been a big part of it because this delves into all sorts of, like you say, Massey, like the Viking sort of stories and the folk tales. So for me, it was him just making something that he loved. And it just proves as well that Shakespeare is a fraud because this is Hamlet, but it's the story of Hamlet. So I was like, oh, that's really lazy. At first, when I saw it, I was like, it's really lazy that Eggers has named his character Hamlet about a kid whose uncle gets killed and he has to his dad gets killed by his uncle, he has to avenge his death. And then I found out actually Hamlet was like an actual Scandinavian legend. It was something that everybody knew about, and Shakespeare just stole it. So yeah, that pissed me off ever so slightly. But anyway, in general, what are we thinking? We'll go back to the Northman, and I'll stop ranting.
Collie?
Just to come back to when you're talking about the guy Sion, I didn't know he worked on Lamb. I watched Lamb it was 2 years ago or whenever it came out because it was nominated as like one of the international films in the Oscars. So I watched it and it is fucked up. It is weird. It is weird. You should check it out, Massey, and let us know your thoughts.
Worth a watch, like, yeah.
Well, I would say it's worth a watch per se, but I think like it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on it down the line. Yeah, it's difficult because I thought all the acting was good in this. Like I kind of touched on with my intro thoughts, but unlike his previous films, I thought the music wasn't a main character in its own right. I thought it was kind of just more kind of bass, kind of fantasy type things. So that it was disappointing, I guess you could say, compared to the other two films. But in terms of just the shooting of the film and the locations that they shot on, it's all like it's Iceland that he goes to, but it's also like obviously it's mainland Scandinavia that he's in. So just every scene looked pretty in the background, and I think it was like they don't even need to do anything like work wise to do it. It's just naturally beautiful. But the final fight when they're on the gates of hell, essentially, is it? That they're fighting at, and it's called something. I did note it down. Holmgang is the name of the kind of fighting that they were doing, which is why they're naked. It's like a traditional, mano a mano kind of type duel that was adopted by early Scandinavians. It was a legally recognized way to settle disputes. That's what I noted down. The name Holmgang may derive from the combatants dueling on a small island or holm, as they do in the saga of Eagle somebody or other. So I did a bit of digging as to why. I was like, why all of a sudden are they naked? Like, why? like they could just be fighting on some lava or whatever, and that's fine. But yeah, that's when it kind of dabbled. Obviously, when he gets the sword, the super powerful sword he needs to kill this mound dweller. That's when there's the scene where with young Amleth and his dad and Willem Dafoe, and they're barking and stuff. Yeah. That was weird. But again, it's that kind of folk story that it's obviously come from somewhere. And so that's kind of where they start introducing the mythical elements. And then later on, he gets this sword. I thought it was obviously quite Arthurian in the fact that he needed to do something to get this sword, whether it's pull it out of a stone or fight this mound dweller. I thought Skarsgård was class, though. I thought in terms of he didn't have to do much because he's supposed to be this quiet, brooding, vengeful, like Viking berserker kind of dude. But I thought there was enough kind of passion in the performance to show that he had wholesome reasons for doing it, because his understanding was that his dad was betrayed and his mum was kidnapped. It kind of comes around that it's not that's not the case. That his mum was actually a sex slave of sorts, and because she became pregnant with the king's child, that's why they became a couple, and that, which was kind of it's a twist, I guess. In none of his films there's particular like twists per se, but I thought that was a bit of an interesting kind of narrative choice. But again, if it's based on myths and stuff or like old folk tales, he needs to kind of follow that line. But yeah, overall it's hard to kind of analyze this in depth as the other two, because it's kind of it's a run of the mill, like something bad happens to kid, time jump 2 decades later, he's going to go back and kill the guy who killed his dad. That's like Todd said, it's linear, it's kind of normal, not normal in terms of like real life or whatever, but as films go, there's quite a lot that are like this. There's enough in this that it shows that Eggers is doing his own thing, but for me, this is probably the one that out of the three of them that I would just be like, oh, you know what, I fancy watching a violent fantasy film. Let's dig into this kind of thing. But even then, there's elements of it that I wouldn't really. There's other stuff that I'd rather watch.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Todd, do you want to give us your thoughts on
the casting?
Yeah, let's unleash Todd. Yeah.
Let me say this first, right?
So I'll just mute for a minute.
Yeah, you just sit there, be quiet. Let's say 5 minutes, just to be generous, right? So Claes Bang, who has the second coolest, the only person who's got a better name is Walton Goggins, right? Have you seen the Dracula TV series on BBC?
No.
Really worth a watch. Not like just straight down the line, it's the Dracula story we've seen before. Claes Bang's amazing as Dracula, and he plays Fjolnir, his brother. I thought he was incredible. Ethan Hawke was fine. He did a job. He was gone. He was out. Claes Bang is like, he just has this like sort of power about him, but he's so subtle about it as well. Like when he's instructing his kid to put the fence posts in, he says you've got to show the slaves that that they can't overthrow you type thing. Everybody, even Willem Dafoe, who had so little to do, was brilliant. And then they cast Nicole Kidman, and I just don't understand it. I don't know if you two feel the same. I just don't understand why people keep casting her in films, because she's shit. I'm not. Sorry, I'm not. I've seen films. The others was a good film, and she was fine in it. Nothing breathtaking, nothing groundbreaking. She can't act, and I don't know. Like I'm not. Sorry, I sound like I'm being like. I sound like I'm exaggerating. Like I'm doing this for like some sort of like this will be funny on the podcast. I genuinely sit there and I'm like, this. What is this? She screams and she shouts, and everything feels overpitched. I don't like. I didn't like the eldest son either. I didn't think he was out of it. But at least he has like a small part of it. He's just a minimal part. Whereas Nicole Kidman could have been like I say. There's these amazing. It doesn't have to be a Scandinavian actress. It doesn't have to be. But like you say, Massey, there's some interesting accents in this film, and hers is the most interesting. I don't know where she's from in this film, but it's not from the same place as everybody else. And I imagine Skarsgård looking at it going, "Stop, please stop butchering my accent." I just it really takes me out of the film, and I think I'm not saying like it's a worse film for it, because it's not, because I'll rewatch this film over and over again. It's a phenomenal film, but it's one of those things where, aside from Finch's voice, who appears at the end of this, which again and doesn't appear with his face at first, all you hear is that voice. It's the one thing that takes me out of it, and I think it's his first poor casting choice. It's the first thing. I don't know. I don't know where the decision was, and like I say, you two might feel differently, but I don't get the career she's built around herself, because I haven't seen her anything that I rate her in. Even Eyes Wide Shut, Kubrick is a master, like an amazing filmography. Shite. It's just so poor. Right, I'm going to stop. That's me. Again, sorry. I don't know if you two feel the same. I don't know if you feel similar or want to say anything about Nicole Kidman. I know you've left it to me.
Certainly, like for me, I didn't think she was that. Certainly, the accent did kind of take me out a little bit. Like literally, my second note that I wrote down was Nicole, the accent. that was literally it. So I mean, at that side, I kind of get it, but like I didn't think she was that bad, to be honest. But I mean, when you said New Meter Pace, I seen you say on Twitter, I was like, yeah, that probably would have worked a little bit better, or a bit better. But I don't think she's that bad. I don't think she's too bad. I do think that she's she definitely benefited from the time that she got big, which was obviously like where you had your big movie stars. I do think she benefited from that and being cast in certain things. But yeah, I didn't think she was. I wouldn't have said that there was anyone that totally took me out of it. As I say, just the accent, that was the only thing from her that I was like, eh. But I did actually think like her scenes with Skarsgård, where they were talking about how she was the one that basically orchestrated the whole thing. I thought she was all right. I thought she was pretty good at that point. But I mean, I don't know, Collie, have you got thoughts on that?
I mean, I think she's a perfectly okay actress. It was Ethan Hawke took me out of it more than her. Just not even like his performance, but just because it was Ethan Hawke. Like, I think that at least Nicole Kidman fits the aesthetic of, like, she's blonde, she's Scandinavian kind of looking, I guess you could say. Whereas like, I don't think Ethan Hawke looks like a Northman. Like, he's just not a very big guy. He doesn't have a nice cool beard or anything like that. It's just I don't feel like he fits the aesthetic. Whereas is it Clay Spang, Todd, you were saying?
Yeah, Clay Spang.
Yes, he looks like a Viking. You know what I mean? Like he looks like, and so I think because he was supposed to be a king as well, I just didn't think Ethan Hawke was very kingly, I guess you could say. So that's more what took me out of it, because I just think of Ethan Hawke from like as the rookie from Training Day. That's like what I go to with Ethan Hawke all the time. That's my instant thoughts with him. So again, it's not per se like his performance, is just casting wise. I think what was good about The Witch especially was like Ralph Ineson and Kate Dickie, who are not, like I said, like when we're talking about earlier, like they're never main characters, like in anything, they never are. So I think that's what I liked about it, because it made it feel more like small, you know, like an independent kind of more personal film. Whereas again, like this film feels like the most mainstream Eggers film, and so I kind of get why they're going with the Hollywood castings of Ethan Hawke and Nicole Kidman, because he can now. Even like talking about the more Hollywood aspect, this is the first, like, apart from people that I know that are into their cinema, that had only ever talked about The Lighthouse before. You know, that wasn't one that, like, it was a household name or whatever. Whereas I feel like The Northman was pushed a lot more as, oh my god, guys, like, look at this new, like, Norse film, it's really good. And it was advertised a lot more, I found. It was spoken about a lot more by people that, like, aren't into their films or whatever. They were like, oh, I just, like, went to the cinema at the weekend and all that Northman was on and I went to see it because it looked cool. Whereas neither of the other two they're more niche, you know, they're more niche, especially The Lighthouse. The Witch at least has, like, horror fans going for it, whereas because The Lighthouse is just, it doesn't have a genre. That was like, you'll only see this if you want to see, you know, Willem Dafoe's latest, or like Robert Eggers' latest because you know who he is, or if you're just into see a film, because that's like The Lighthouse. I obviously The Witch was a film that I wasn't aware of when I went to see The Lighthouse. It was more just my mate Kevin Work was like, right, we had the cinema tickets, so we were going like once a week, regardless of what was on. We wanted to see a film a week, and this just so happened, The Lighthouse just so happened to be on. Whereas, you know, I felt like people were just tweeting out, going, "Oh, I just went to see that Northman," that are kind of more casual film goers. But there's nothing wrong with that. But it just kind of shows maybe why the likes of Kidman and Hawke and that were cast in this, was because it kind of brings more, like, even what, like, you know, Alexander Skarsgård, like, all the Skarsgård brothers are big now, you know what I mean, like, in their own right. So he's a good choice for a leading man, but I think he's a good choice for a leading man in terms of, he's not like an A-lister, it's not like a Tom Cruise or anybody like that, but he's big enough, and again, he fits the aesthetic. He looks, well, he is Swedish, you know what I mean? So it's not even that he looks it, he is Swedish. So I think it was a good kind of choice for him, and I thought he was excellent. And I've not watched Succession yet, but based on like rewatching The Northman, I'm really looking forward to seeing how he is in Succession, because I know he's in it at one point.
Oh, is he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's some kind of tech guy in Succession, apparently. Just when I was looking up his IMDb.
Oh, interesting. Special shout out certainly from me to the kid actor that's him younger. I thought he was.
Oh,
he was
yeah,
good.
yeah.
I thought he was good.
Yeah, he was solid. Yeah.
Like, see when he's like in the rowing boat getting away, and he's shouting his mantra, you know, the "I'll avenge you, father, I'll save you, mother, I'll kill you, Fjolnir." Like, you believed it. I thought he was really good. I thought he was brilliant. So fair play to him for that. But yeah, that was just my little extra bit. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the film. I thought it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic, and I will be watching it again. And if it does, I don't think it will ever come out of the cinema, but certainly if I get it like like Blu-ray or something like that, I'll be watching it like properly. I think it's got the scope for that. So yeah, very, very good film.
I think it's got the potential. Eggers has the potential to have like not even like an indie cinema, like a sort of an everyman cinema type thing. Will have like an Eggers season or whatever. He has the potential to do that, because I think, like I say, the cult following that The Witch got, the critical acclaim that The Lighthouse got, and then how, like you say, how mainstream and how many people saw this. I wouldn't be surprised if it does come back to the cinema at some point, like as a re-release. Just because, like, that first scene, it's not the first scene at all. The first invasion scene, where it's that track and shot, like from where he catches the axe and then throws it. From there, you're like, you've gripped those action fans. Do you know what I mean? And I think, you know, like I say, he's showing off what he can do. He's not just a little indie film guy. He can do the big sweeping vistas. He can do the, you know, the action. But again, with his next film, he's not going to be. That's going to be straight up horror, taking on Nosferatu, which I'm excited about, because have either of you seen the original?
I have seen the original, and I was, again, because I knew that we'd maybe touch on this as a kind of closing thoughts about, you know, our overall thoughts on Eggers. But yeah, I think it was pushed for him to do this. I did note it down somewhere. It was pushed for him to do this as his second film after The Witch, and he was kind of like, let's just calm down a minute. Like, you know, I've only ever done one film before this, Nosferatu. I think not just for him, but just in general, is this kind of revered silent, horror film that kind of kicked on a lot of the subsequent, films for the last 100 years, essentially horror wise. So he was like, let's just calm down a minute. But now that he's tackling it as his next project, I'm excited for it. Again, it's not kind of my kind of film that I'd pick up and watch, but because it's him now, and because I've watched these three, even though these three had mixed feelings, and I actually, through talking about them, I've not turned like more onto like wanting to watch them again and stuff, but I've maybe softened a little bit through you guys discussing what you liked about it, to then be like, oh well, actually maybe I liked it a lot more than I did. But regardless of not loving 5 out of 5 in any of these films, I'm excited to see what he does next, because he's a very interesting guy. He's got an interesting way of making films, and he's got an interesting mind. And I was out for dinner last night with Gabby's folks, and I was talking to her dad about doing this today, and I was just like, I feel like he's one of those guys, and these three films are those films that if you're into cinema and you're into your movies, and I think I maybe spoke about it at the start, and you're a cinephile, which I would say us three are, and a lot of our friends are as well. He's a guy that you want to watch and analyze, because he's doing things that aren't MCU films and aren't fucking Fast and Furious a million and all that stuff. That like he's making films that are kind of stand out on their own, which is really cool. It's like the guys who did Everything Everywhere All at Once, and a lot of it is A24 related, but it's these guys that have kind of got these brilliant minds that they're kind of the next generation of like Kubrick's or like Wes Anderson's, or these guys or some of the other directors that we're going to move on to do in our next few episodes and stuff, that like Jordan Peele, for example, like just these guys that are doing not run-of-the-mill films, and I think we kind of need to make sure that we're talking about and supporting these films as much as possible. Otherwise, I do kind of get bored by people tweeting out going, oh, it's all just sequels and remakes and all that, like franchises. But there's a truth element to that, but I feel like people use that as a lazy kind of derogatory term, but it is true to an extent. So it's the likes of the Peels and McDonoughs, like it's all these people that have got maybe small and concise filmographies, but every film is like not a 10 out of 10 hit per se, but it's different, it's provoking, like different feelings. I don't even know where this point started, but
no, they're lovingly made. That's the thing. Like that they're making them because either they want to make them, or they've gone like, right, somebody's gone to them, like a studio or a writer's got them and said, I've got this idea, I've got this pitch, and they've gone, yeah, but I'm not making it unless it's got A, B, C, and D. Like that they're not bending to us, and I think that's the big thing. It's not like not what's it called, sacrificing like your artificial vision, artistic vision. Sorry, not sacrificing your artistic vision. I think that's the big thing.
I think we sorry, Massey, on you go.
I was going to say, I think I do certainly feel that it's kind of even just more casual viewers are going that way as well. Like there's that what's on with the hand? You love it, Todd. Talk to me, is it?
Talk to me.
Yeah. So like that's like just two guys in New Zealand that are like that made this horror film, and now it's like massive, like heaps of folk are talking about it. And I think
Peter Jackson described it as like the greatest horror he's seen for 20 years or something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
And again, he started in body horror, Peter Jackson, so for him to say that's kind of huge. But sorry, Massey, your point.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, like, I think that certainly the whole superhero universes and sequels and etc., unless they're good, they are definitely dipping now. You look at Flash, you look at some of the MCU films that people talk about, but then the good ones like the Guardians Volume 3 are being successful and stuff as well. So I do think that a lot of people are kind of veering away from the known superhero stuff, the known like you said, Fast and Furious and things, and going more towards these sort of like smaller, more lovingly made films, because they know that they're going to be getting something that is not potentially just a formulaic sort of experience, and they're actually going to get something different and stuff. So I've what I was trying to say is I feel like it's certainly going that way, and I hope it does. I really do hope it does.
Not to get like too political and stuff, but the current climate of this writer strike and stuff, though, I do have concerns that could kind of impact I think like long term it'll be fine, but there will be, I think, a lull in smaller, more independent, more lower financed films in the next wee while because of this, because of this rightful protest and rightful striking and stuff.
100%.
But I feel like as a consumer, it'll harm us in terms of content to consume. But I'd rather they were, getting
Paid
rightfully
fairly.
treated and stuff and getting paid fairly and
100%.
all that kind of stuff, of course. But from a selfish point of view, I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to watch.
Can't watch The Office again for the 20th.
Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah, well,
I'm watching The Walking Dead spitefully,
Just quickly, I just wanted to quickly say, we were talking obviously about Eggers' next film, Nosferatu. I just quickly brought up the cast. Have you guys seen the cast for it? Like, it looks ridiculous. So
It's Johnny Depp's daughter's in it.
yeah, so she's in it. So the nurse Skarsgård, Bill. You've got another ATJ, which isn't Anya Taylor-Johnson. It's Aaron Taylor-Johnson. Willem Dafoe, and
Another ATJ, like,
and Ralph Ineson as well, isn't it as well? So
of course he is.
yeah, I'm all in now. I'm all in. I mean, I was obviously gonna watch it anyway, but like seeing just that cast, I'm like, yeah, okay, it's gonna be good. Yeah, definitely. And just quickly on the topic of Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Craven's coming out soon. Can't wait. Cannot wait.
See, we don't have to delve too much into it because this is Robert Eggers' podcast. But do you see that he came out and was like, "Oh yeah, when I did the old MCU films and that, I didn't give a shit."
Yeah.
But some folk, I think, are because I read the whole article, I think, or most of it, and I think what he was trying to say was he used to not give a shit, but with Craven, he's really into it. But it's like people are just taking the headline of like him being like, "Oh, I used to," or like, "I didn't give a shit when I did MCU," and folk were like, "Oh, well, Craven's going to be shit then." It's. I don't feel that it's going to be like that, although I just worry about Sony Marvel films. If it's anything like fucking Morbin time, then it's all over, It's all over.
To be fair, Craven's like a fantastic character. Again, we're not going to get too far into it, but I love Craven, so I really
I'm looking forward to playing against Craven and Spider-Man 2 on the PlayStation.
Yeah, that's well,
yeah.
I can't wait. Yeah.
How are you going to play it?
When it comes out on PC.
PC in 2026.
Okay, doke. Anything else I want to talk about, or you want to wrap up there, guys?
No,
I think we're talked out. I mean, like I said, I knew this was going to be more concise than last time. Maybe kind of because Chazelle, like one of Chazelle's films, like one of my favorite films of all time. We went quite hard on him. Whereas Eggers, I think, first watches all three for you, Massey. Like me, mixed feelings. Todd, kind of probably the most passionate out of the three of us. But we're going to have that, I think, moving forward in episodes, especially if we're going to go in the list order that Todd produced the other day and who's going to be next for us to analyse.
Yeah, because I think we're going to go with that, aren't we? So, I mean,
I
Todd,
think so, yeah.
do you want to introduce who our next director is that we're going to talk about?
Yeah, very excited. So, on the next episode, we are going to be talking about Martin McDonagh. He has 4 feature films. So we will be talking about In Bruges, 7 Psychopaths, 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, and The Banshees of Inisherin. And I'm sure we'll briefly touch on, just if people want to do a little bit of like watching his Oscar-winning short film 6-Shooter, which is just available on YouTube, and well worth a watch.
Nah.
But I'm sure it'll bit it off. Sack it, all right.
I thought you meant his brother, to be honest. I thought we were just going to watch The Guard and Calvary, and that was it. It was going to be a half-an-hour episode, and that's it.
Through. Yeah, very excited to, because I do think this will be one. Get ready for a 4-hour episode. I think.
Just Todd.
Well, you have to make sure you get a different mic by then. That would be.
I will make sure. That'll be. It's in the plans. We'll see. But yeah, it'll be sorted.
Better be. Or else
It better be, or we're not recording it. Yeah, we're
I'll be
abstaining.
sorry, you will be recording it without me, and I'll just be there. Go, please let me talk about McDonagh.
I don't think we can record it without you, but we will hold steadfast on not recording it until you get a new mic.
It's almost like these days with Amazon, and you can just get things in a day. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, why are we still waiting?
He did get one though, and he sent it back
because it recorded everything ever. Like I So anyway, that's what I get for not listening to Collie's advice. I'd like to point out to people who aren't, who don't know. I think I've been sacked from this podcast 4, maybe 5 times in 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So just as a heads up, if you don't hear my voice next week,
And anytime Todd voices an opinion in the WhatsApp group I don't agree with, I just reply sacked.
Sacked. I'm done.
And there's no
Being the
HR, so we can do
kingmaker
that.
You know, this podcast is only moving forward because of me. You know?
The podcast maker.
Sweet.
Right, we're just rambling now at this point. We'll leave it there. But guys, thank you so much for that. And on the next episode, as I say, we'll be talking about Martin McDonagh. Take care.
Cheers, guys. Peace.
See you in a bit.
Bye-bye.